Chad Hasty Show, News Talk, KFYO, broadcasting from the Culligan Water Studios. A lot of political news happening today, and even going back into last week, joining us to delve into just a little bit of the political news of the day, GOP political strategist. It's Matt Mackowiak. Matt, good morning. How are you?
Good morning, Chad. I'm doing great. How about you?
Doing great. Thanks for joining us today on the show. Before we get into all the Manafort stuff, I want to go back to last week and get your thoughts on Speaker Joe Straus retiring, not going to return to the House, not going to return as Speaker, obviously, and what do you think the fallout from that will be?
Yeah, so there's been quite a bit of speculation about this. I saw something about five members of the legislature that were working within the caucus, the Republican caucus in the House, that had voted to basically recommend the changes to the way that the Speaker is elected, that happened last week, and that could have precipitated Straus's decision to go ahead and announce he's not running for re-election. That said, I think the Speaker has served 5 terms as Speaker. He's, it's a very grueling job, and obviously I don't think he really enjoyed the regular session or the special session this year, and in some ways he's politically aligned against the governor and lieutenant governor, or certainly on some issues. So I think his position was probably not particularly strong politically. In terms of what it means, I think there's obviously huge potential now to have a far more conservative Texas House Speaker. Exactly who that person is and what it means and kind of who wins and who loses, I think still has to develop over time. A lot of that's going to depend on what happens with the primaries. Perhaps as important a development as Straus not running again, is Byron Cook not running again, who's the state affairs chairman, who has really blocked a lot of conservative bills over the past 2 regular sessions. So, look, this is a sea change. This is the end of the Straus era in Texas. I know a lot of conservatives are very excited about that, about the potential for putting a more conservative speaker in place. So you can start, moving things like school choice, you had you had 10 or so of the special session items that did not pass entirely because of the Texas House. So I think there's real potential here for a new beginning, but we're not going to really even know what the makeup of the legislature is going to look like until the primaries and the primary runoffs are over in March and in May, respectively.
When it comes to Straus's future, I don't think he's done in politics. I don't think he wants to be done in politics, but I don't see him challenging the governor, and I don't see him challenging the lieutenant governor, at least not this year or next year in 2018. What do you think? Do you think that we'll see a challenge from him, if not in 2018, maybe in the future? And is he someone who would even want to run for governor or lieutenant governor?
Well, it's an interesting question, and even he, I think, admitted that his name identification statewide is very low, and that's true, actually, for a Speaker of the House. You're only elected by one of 150 Texas House districts, and while he has been gotten a lot of attention as Speaker, his name ID is still probably 10 or 15% statewide. That said, he does have, I believe, $8 or even $10 million in his campaign account. Now, he has expressed an interest in spending some of that money this cycle to try to protect and support candidates that he thinks share his vision for the future of the state of Texas, and that would presumably mean his loyal committee chairs and loyal lieutenants in the Texas House. I'm a little bit less confident that he's likely to have a political future. I just think the dynamics of the Republican primary in Texas are such that it's very difficult for me to see him having much of a path, whether it would be for statewide office. One thing that's often been discussed as a possibility is that he might run for Congress to replace Lamar Smith when and if Lamar Smith retires. I have no reason to believe that that's going to happen anytime soon, but certainly could happen. He's been there quite a while. So that to me, I think, is more likely than someday running for governor or lieutenant governor, but who knows?
Yeah. Let's turn our attention to the national political world. Paul Manafort making some headlines today under indictment, but at least from everything I've read, this really has nothing to do with collusion and with Russia and Trump, correct?
So that's correct. This particular indictment is very serious. I think it has 11 counts against Manafort and his business partner, Rick Gates. It includes a number of felonies, conspiracy against America, filing false records relating to financial disclosures with foreign bank accounts relating to foreign lobbying. There's some very serious charges there, and so I think he has some very serious legal liability. Now, there's also a report today that another individual, a guy named George Papados, who in fact was working in the White House, has now, and of course resigned several months ago, has been charged with lying to the feds. And that was something that would have occurred around January of this year. Now, that is not in this indictment. That'll come, I presume, in the next few days, a few weeks. But that does at least bring this to some extent, one or two degrees closer, to the Trump team directly. But the indictment itself, it got so much attention over the weekend, relates to Paul Manafort and his business partner Rick Gates, and it's basically business practice related to things that Manafort was doing before he ever joined the campaign as campaign chairman. For however long he was there, several months.
So is this one of those indictments, and of course, we may learn more in the future, and I suspect we will, but it just, everything is starting to shape up. It seems that we can't find collusion between the Trump team and Russia. There's none of this there, but as special prosecutor, if we find other crimes, if we find other things to indict people for, then we can go to those areas. Is that where you think we're kind of going?
So obviously, it's very hard to know for sure. Based on the reporting I saw this morning, it sounded like there was a statute of limitations issue related to this indictment, and that explains the timing. I don't know which charge had a statute of limitations related to it and what the deadlines were, but that may explain why they moved this. Now, a kind of a common tactic that prosecutors use is to go after one person initially, and then try to use that indictment against them, the seriousness of that indictment, to try to go after someone else. And so it's going to be very interesting to see how Manafort plays this. As of now, we don't know if he's pleading guilty or not guilty. I presume he's hopefully not guilty, but they're building a case here. I don't think this is the end of the Russia inquiry. I really don't. I don't know where it's going to go from here, or how many more months are going to occur. There's been a sense that Manafort has had serious legal problems for several months. So today's news is actually not that consequential. I think the question now becomes, does Michael Flynn, the former national security advisor, have any legal challenges? He was doing some foreign lobbying as well that I believe was unregistered at the time. Does Jared Kushner have problems? Does Donald Trump Jr. have problems? Maybe none of them do. I don't think we know. I think this investigation continues to build, and obviously the only person that knows what the special counsel has is Robert Mueller. They have far more information, I think, than people realize. They've interviewed every single person that was at the meeting at Trump Tower between the Russian lobbyist and Donald Trump Jr. I think 6 people were in that meeting. They've now interviewed all 6 of those people. So there's a lot of information, I think, that they have. It's not clear where this goes from here. I think the Trump White House and the Trump team will say, listen, this is Paul Manafort's business problem, not a campaign collusion problem. But I don't think they're out of the woods yet.
Let's turn our attention real quick just to tax reform. That's something that I know Republicans wanted to start rolling out this week. The White House really wanted to focus on this week. It'll kind of get run over by the Manafort story, of course. But as far as tax, how big of a deal is this for Republicans to get something done on tax reform?
Oh, it's just massive, Chad. I think you can't overstate the importance of it. And that's for several reasons, right? I mean, I think on the one hand, they're sitting here 10 months in, and they have really almost no significant legislative accomplishments. The House has moved a lot of bills. There's something like 400 bills that are awaiting consideration in the Senate. The Senate did confirm a Supreme Court justice, but other than that, the Senate hasn't done much of consequence. It's pretty clear they're not going to do anything on Obamacare, at least in terms of a replacement before the end of the year. So this is really their last chance to get something done, something that Trump promised, something that Republicans promised. But there's other reasons that this is important as well. I mean, I think if this were to fail, you could see the party, at least in Washington, at the national level, splinter in ways that are truly counterproductive and threaten the future of the party. And so, but the biggest reason is that this tax reform has the potential to really unleash the power of the American economy. You could see, right now we've had 2 consecutive quarters of 3% growth, which I believe did not happen in all 8 years of the Obama administration, but you've already had it here in the first year of the Trump administration. If we can get to 4 or 5, 6% annual economic growth, it's going to be truly significant for wages, for job creation, for investment. So they're still finalizing the pieces. They're going to release the full bill, I understand, on Wednesday. It'll have a middle class tax cut piece. It'll have a corporate tax cut. It will simplify the code. It'll do a lot of very important things. But boy, they have got to get this done. And based on the timetable they put forward, Chad, the House is going to mark it up, I think, next week and pass it the week of November 12th and 13th. And the Senate has said they're going to stay in the week of Thanksgiving to try to pass it before Thanksgiving. Now, that timetable can change, but that shows they're pretty committed. They really want to do this in the month of November. The longer these complicated issues stay out there, the easier it is to kill them, which is what we saw with healthcare. Matt,
tell folks where they can get your newsletter and also your podcast.
Yeah, send out a morning newsletter for the state of Texas every weekday, mustreadtexas.com, with all the top news put in one email sent to your inbox. And the podcast is called Mac on Politics. We have top newsmakers and policymakers and leading people in the country. Latest guest is Chris Hayes, the anchor of the All In with Chris Hayes on MSNBC. We talk about a number of interesting subjects. You can find that on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, and on the web at MacKonPolitics.com.
Excellent. Matt, as always, appreciate your time.
Thanks, buddy. Have a great week. See ya.
You too. That's Matt Mackowiak.